Is Callaway's new mini driver the best on the market? I'm going to be putting the Callaway Paradym AI Smoke up against the TaylorMade Burner mini driver copper to find out which of these is the best driver alternative out there. It feels like there's been an explosion in popularity of mini drivers recently, so it's no surprise that we've started to see other brands come to the forefront and join this section of the market. After all, they weren't going to let TaylorMade sit there on their own for very long. Now, Callaway have been the first to actually bring another one to market. We have seen Titleist launch one on tour, but that is for tour players only. So let's see how these two compare. I think the first big thing to talk about here is like the visual difference and kind of the storytelling that's going on here. TaylorMade's is all very about that retro theme, about bringing that kind of old school small head driver back. It's very about like classical looks, but obviously it has that hint of new technology in here. I feel like Callaway have gone like the complete opposite. This is like identical head cover to kind of the new AI Smoke range, very similar tech, and it just looks a lot more modern and clean. So yes, we do have that smaller head, but actually there isn't really a throwback to kind of the reasoning or the smaller size or maybe that historic link. It's much more about new technology and giving like fairway performance but in a driver size head. So that's pretty interesting. I think if we're giving points away though, TaylorMade has to win it for the head cover, don't they? I mean, it's just pretty cool. Now, although these are very different in terms of visuals, I think they both look great in their own way. And actually, probably it's quite good that Callaway have done something different because it's not like a direct comparison and it kind of sits somewhere different. This is a slightly bigger head on the ground and it does look a little deeper. So I wonder how that'll perform as a fairway wood. But I think as a driver off the tee, it looks really appealing to hit. And actually it almost kind of has that small like triple diamond like feel which a lot of people like. TaylorMade's looks smaller, more compact and definitely feels like it could possibly be more versatile. We'll see if that is true later. They've also got a more specific kind of K-sole shaping which is designed for hitting this off the turf when you're using it like a 3-wood, which we don't see in the Callaway model, but so it'll be interesting to see again if there's that little bit more versatility there from kind of the sole shape as well as the size. Now in terms of other tech, they're fairly similar in the fact that they've got a lighter weight at the front, a heavier weight at the back. You can swap these round if you want to kind of lower the launch, change the spin properties. I think for me, I probably prefer that in the back. It's going to give me a little bit more forgiveness, a little bit more MOI with that there. Both of these kind of have the brand's latest tech in here. So we've got the AI Smart Face in the Callaway. That's also got the micro sweet spots across the face that we see in their new drivers. These are both titanium faces. So we don't have the carbon face that we see in a lot of the TaylorMade drivers, but we do have things such as twist face, the speed pocket on the bottom. So actually loads of technology going in these for the size of the club head. Now, neither of these have been custom fit. They're just off the shelf models, although both brands do have my specs. So they're kind of in the right place. They've not sent me like random extra stiff, really heavy shafts or anything like that. These are different lofts though, so I have done a little tweaking. The Callaway is 13.5, which I think is probably what would be best for me. When I tested the 11.5, which is what I've got in the TaylorMade, it did launch a little low, so I've cranked this up to 13.5 so they match. This might affect the face angle a little bit. It should, in theory, shut the face down a bit, so we'll just look for that in the dispersion and see if that is the case. In terms of shafts, they're fairly similar. In the TaylorMade, I've got a 65 stiff. In the Callaway, I've got a 60 stiff. So we'll see how we get on with these and what the differences are. So I'm going to start with the Callaway mini driver because I haven't hit this yet and I'm just excited to hit it, to be honest. We've got 6 balls. I might use a couple to warm up and then use the back ones at the end for my actual data. I've got all TP5Xs just for consistency here, but I've got one set that are plain and one set of the picks so I can tell the differences between the two. Although we do also have TrackMan set up to show me the difference in data. I'm going to hit them off the tee first here. Then we'll head down and hit some out the fairway, I think, to get like off the deck comparison. I'm not too sure what the correct tee height is for a mini driver. Guess whatever you feel most comfortable with. Okay, so I've not actually hit a shot yet, but I can feel like the balance of this shaft is definitely different to the one in the TaylorMade. The TaylorMade to me feels like quite a whippy, fairly soft shaft. This feels like it's definitely stiffer in the bottom half of the shaft. Just gonna probably change my ball flight a little bit. To be honest, that's generally what I prefer to use. But maybe sometimes just having that softer feel at the bottom might be easier to hit. We'll see. So I do really like the shape of this behind the ball. I think they've done a really good job. It doesn't feel overly small actually. It doesn't feel miles off a driver. It feels quite normal actually. I've probably picked one of the tightest holes in the whole of Portugal to test these on, by the way. We're at Vidego Palace. It's incredible. Let's see how many fairways I can hit. That sounded really nice. I actually pushed it a little bit. I mean, first shot of the day. But straight away what I can see is the ball flight is a lot higher on this than what I saw with the TaylorMade. It's definitely probably more in the right launch window, which shows me that 13.5 is definitely more where I should be looking. If you're someone who has kind of a mid ball flight, I would definitely probably look at the 13.5 model versus the 11.5. In both drivers, they have both options, so you can kind of pick and choose depending on how high or low you want to hit it. So first shot out of the gate, that carried 195 yards off 89 mile an hour club head speed. 4,000 spin, which is probably a little more than I've seen with the TaylorMade before, but I don't mind that. 102 feet in terms of height, which I think is pretty good for me. That's kind of what I aim to try and hit with my clubs, about 100 feet. 1.46 smash, not bad for the first shot of the day. Oh, that was so nice. We are a tad into the wind, so that's probably going to affect kind of the overall carry distance with both of these, but it's the same for both, so that's fine. 205 carry, that was definitely a better strike. Spin down at 3.5, probably more where we'd look for it to be. But again, 97 feet, so pretty good, pretty consistent in terms of that height. Run out to 220, I like that. It's kind of carries shorter, but runs out just short of where my driver would pitch, so actually quite a good gap. It's basically pretty much doing what my 3-wood does, though. It's not necessarily much longer, although we are into the wind, a bit uphill, but it is also very warm and sunny. Feels really nice off the face. I love the feeling. I would say with all these mini drivers, what's interesting is they definitely feel more fade bias than some of the other driver models on the market. I think generally now people are moving to a more draw biased option, just because in general the majority of golfers are slicers, but actually sometimes when you get to maybe the better player or a player who really hits down on the ball more or is a better like iron striker, they want a wood that's more fade biased. That's what they prefer. So if you're someone who sits in that category and you don't necessarily love driver and you want an alternative and you like to be able to hit a fade off the tee, this is a really good option. We're even seeing more people on tour now carrying 2 drivers. They have kind of their main driver, which they're using as that shot for straight shots or when they want to hit a draw, and then they're having a mini driver as a fade biased club. So it just gives them a way of navigating around the course a lot easier. They're not having to hit different shots with the same club. They can just have clubs set up to kind of hit the shots they need to do out on the golf course. And I think that's a much easier way of pulling off different shot shapes, especially for us higher handicap golfers who just don't practice our shot shaping much. Like, if you're not practicing it, you shouldn't try out on the course unless you've got a specific setup to do that. I actually really love the performance of this. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm just hitting like a teeny little fade. It's really consistent, the height's really good. I feel like this is performing a bit better than the TaylorMade did last time. Although I did hit this on a very windy, cold day in England. So we'll find out in a minute. That one's carried 208, spun 3,300, 98 feet of height. All very consistent data so far. I have been driving it pretty bad, probably the last 2 years. If we look at my ShotScope data, we can literally see me like zigzagging around the golf course sometimes. So maybe I do actually need to be considering one of these, just accept I'm not going to have a 3-wood, but have like a second driver that will get me in play on tight holes. Because this is narrow, and those last 2 are so good. Those last 2 are literally right next to each other. That's gone even further. Carry 211.9, basically 212. Total 231, spin 3,000, it spun a bit less. I launched it a bit lower. Only 83 feet. Pretty impressed so far. Let's see how the TaylorMade compares. So I did love this last time I hit it, and in terms of looks, I would pick this as a preference, but it did go a little lower. So we're going to be interested to see what it does in this new setting with a bit more loft on it. Also how that affects the face angle and the dispersion. Definitely looks more short. I actually cut that more than the other one. I didn't strike that my best. It was a bit of nerves looking at it and thinking it looked a bit short. Pretty similar to my first one with the Callaway, so 197 carry. A lot lower spin, which is quite interesting, 2,800. Total 218, height up at 80 feet. Definitely wasn't my best strike, so let's hit a few more. That was better. Height was straight back up. Interesting, it has pitched just short of the Callaway though. I suppose I have lofted it up, so that does make sense. It's not kind of a traditional 13.5 as in 11.5 lofted up. 201 carry with that, 3,000 spin, 96 height. It's very close to what we saw with the Callaway in terms of height there on a good strike. All in all, pretty similar. The width of the dispersion was tiny there though. They've literally pitched right next to each other, although a little shorter than the Callaway. I would say so far this probably feels like the more workable option. I think if you're someone who likes to hit a lot of different shapes, different flight windows, you know, left to right or right to left, you're probably going to be able to do that more with this. Callaway's feels much more like a modern driver. It also does perform a little bit more like that, so a little bit faster. I guess it kind of depends what you want out of this model. I think for most people who are moving into this, as someone who doesn't like driver and they're wanting something that's maybe a little bit different. Okay, struck that better and that came out a lot faster. It's actually got up to the longest one with the Callaway. So 212 yards, the spin was down a little bit. It was a little bit further left than the other ones, so it's probably a slight pull. 2-3 in terms of spin, 80 feet of height, but all in all still pretty consistent. .208 carry on that one, 3,000 spin, 91 feet of height. So to be honest, actually across the two there wasn't actually masses of difference, which is probably what I would have expected. Let's just have a quick look at the overall averages. So club head speed was almost identical with both of them. I was 89.2 with the Callaway and 89.5 with the TaylorMade, so a fraction faster, but not much. Interestingly, my angle of attack was actually a lot steeper. I was hitting down like 2 degrees more with the Callaway. Maybe that's just like a visual thing of how different they looked in the sizes, but I wouldn't have expected that at all. Now in terms of ball speed, I was actually 3 miles an hour faster with the Callaway, but actually that didn't really show up in terms of like the average carry distance, because the Callaway averaged 205.2 and TaylorMade averaged 204.7, so pretty close. I was actually getting a little bit more run out with the TaylorMade as well. It got to 224 total compared to 220 with the Callaway, but I guess it kind of depends what you want out of that. Is it something you're going to be flying into a green, or is it something you want to run out more? The land angle wasn't as steep with the TaylorMade, which is probably why we got a little bit more run. And again, that was reflected in the height. The Callaway went a little bit higher, 94.9. The TaylorMade went a little bit lower at 86.5. But interestingly, the TaylorMade was launching like nearly a degree higher, but wasn't coming down as steep. I was getting more spin with the Callaway, 3,500 compared to 2,800 with the TaylorMade. So I don't think with any of those numbers there's really a right or wrong or one that's particularly better. I think with this kind of club it really depends what you're looking to use this for. Is it something you're really looking to use off the tee, and do you want it just to hit fairways? Is it something you want to do shot shaping with, or is it a club you're going to hit off the deck? And you kind of have to reflect on what it is you want. Do you want something that's a second driver that goes lower and you can cut? Do you want it purely just to hit the fairway and actually you want to hit the ball higher? It's really hard to say here which is better. I think the Callaway was probably more consistent if you just wanted a pure driver club to hit the middle of the fairway. I think the TaylorMade was definitely more workable if you're someone who wants to hit shot shapes, do different things, change the ball flight. So it really kind of depends what you want this club to do before I can say which is right or wrong, which maybe might not be very helpful. I might have some more conclusive answers after I've hit them both off the deck. Oh good, you're still there. If you have a second, it would really mean a lot to me if you could hit that subscribe button. Over 75% of people who watch my videos are not actually subscribed, and growing that subscriber number really helps in terms of what content we can create and where we could go, so it really helps the channel out. And while you're there, you might as well hit that like button. Maybe even drop us a comment and tell us which mini driver you think is going to be the winner, or which one you would really like to test out. Right, back to the video. Okay, driver off the deck time. This could be interesting because they're definitely slightly different shape and sizes here. It'd be interesting to see what the versatility like is hitting this off the deck. Also, side note, look how good this hole looks. I couldn't resist doing it off this tee. I know I said I was going to drop the fairway, but it looks so nice to that green. We have got over 200 yards to the green though, so I'm not entirely sure we're going to get there. It is a bit downhill, so hopefully that helps us out. Now, I'm not going to lie, I get the heebie-jeebies over topping fairways all the time, even if I don't do it a lot. So I think like the depth of these isn't necessarily the most comforting in terms of like confidence for hitting them off the deck. But let's see how we get on, because I was actually quite surprised last time I hit the burner how well I got on with it. Starting with the Callaway again first, see how this goes. It's definitely the deeper face of the two, and it does literally feel like I'm hitting a driver off the deck. Although, tell you what, that flew really easily. Oh, pitched straight on the green. Thanks for coming. Shows you why you shouldn't presume something, doesn't it? Okay, so maybe I lasered the hole wrong. It says that's carried 188.7 yards for a total of 208. Although actually that stopped really quickly on the green. It like pitched into a little upslope. Spin 3,500, which was pretty good. Height is definitely lower than it was off the tee, down to 66 feet. But I think you would expect that. It probably looked like it flew higher here just because the hole drops down. And the smash factor was still 1.42, which is pretty efficient for this kind of club. I mean, it's definitely shorter than what I would hit my current 3 wood, but it is only the first shot, so let's see how we get on when we hit a few more balls. It was nice though. Took quite a big divot. Can we just appreciate that strike as well? I'm sure you're going to see it on camera, but straight out of the middle. It's nearly going to pitch on top of the other ball. Okay, maybe about 6 foot right, just cut off at the end. But again, strike, pretty consistent. That's flown at 188.9, 0.2 yards longer. Can't get much nearer than that. Interesting, the spin went up a bit more there, 4-4. 82 feet of height there, definitely hit that bit higher. Definitely feels like a fade bias club currently. I'm kind of hitting mid cuts with this now. Probably also because I'm probably hitting down and left a little bit more as well because I'm hitting it off the deck. Come on, cut round to the pin. Oh, it's way long. So striped that. 195 carry. That's kind of getting a bit nearer what I would want out of a 3 wood, but I still feel like it's a little bit too short. So my hybrid probably goes about 192, 195, and then my 3 wood would go like 205, 210. So I'm definitely losing a little bit out on that. So then I guess it just begs the question, what do you do at the top of your bag? Like, are you just sacrificing a 3 wood? Maybe I'd have to take my hybrid and my 3 wood out and have like a strong 5 wood or a 4 wood to give something that like fills the other gap a bit more evenly, because I think it does kind of beg the question what you would do with the rest of your bag, because if I took my 3 wood out to put this in, although it would give me a really great second option off the tee, it's not carrying much far past my hybrid, so it doesn't really give me loads of options going into the green for a second shot. Although I suppose it might run out more, so there could be that option of kind of chasing it onto the green. I've pulled that a little bit, it's going to go longer. 202 carry, yeah, that's definitely kind of what I would need. Maybe I kind of just need to play like a aim left pull with this for my second shot to get it going a bit further, although obviously the problem with that is the height comes down a bit. We're back in the 60s there. 1.5 smash though, very efficient. Actually really enjoying hitting this. It's way easier to hit off the deck than I expected. Like, I just thought for the size of the head and the depth of it, I was going to find it hard, although I guess it is very like cambered and curved on the sole, so it's probably helping me out. Oh god, that's all over the pin. Sit. Oh, it's long. Striped that. Let's just run off the back. 207.4 carry. Maybe I just need to hit it more and get into it. Maybe I was a little bit nervous at the start. 3-4 spin, 90 feet of height. That's going to be really good for like getting a decent amount of control. It's growing on me. It's growing on me. I just hit 6 balls with this. Granted, I missed 1 right, but all the rest have either pitched and stayed on the green or just run off the back. That one I didn't strike quite as good. It's dropped down to 193. Interesting. Let's see how the TaylorMade compares. So last time I hit this, it went really low, and I still forgot a driver crank. So now it's got more loft. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. I just think this looks a little bit more forgiving at address. It just doesn't look quite as deep, and it's smaller, so it's a tad more confidence inspiring. But again, that's going to vary from player to player. Like, different people just like looking at different things. I definitely span less. Well, it looked like it did. Then that's literally finished like 6 foot behind the pin. Like, the ball was literally hiding behind the pin. 10 out of 10 for accuracy. Not quite flown as far as the other ones yet. 181 carry. There was definitely a little bit of the left path. 1700 spin. Yeah, I could feel that it span less. 50 feet of height. I do think if we had like a static 13.5 head versus just lofting it up, it would probably give me more launch, but we got what we got. Oh, that was a much better strike. Interestingly, this seems to fly straighter off the deck than it did off the tee. Like, this felt a lot more fade bias off the tee, but now the ball fly is quite straight. I was definitely cutting it more with the Callaway. Difference in strike quality. That's just carried 209 straight away, 3.9 spin. I think my first one was just a me problem, not a club problem. Oh, that was healing, that's cut. Not my finest. Still 195 carry off that though, actually. And there was a lot of left to right shape on that. I'm pretty pleased with that. So despite hitting a pretty big cut with that, it's obviously not the most efficient for distance, that's still flown further than 3 of the shots with the Callaway, which is interesting. Oh, pure. It's just flown straight onto the back edge as well. Interesting, the spin's getting up now. So I was in the high 4,000s again, and you could see that on the green because it actually stopped a lot quicker. That's carried 205, which is nearly up with my longest with the Callaway. It's getting interesting. Okay, so we just had a small technical error in the fact my TrackMan's just died. Don't think it was used to the heat. It's used to like 10 degrees and windy in England. Anyway, we've got 4 shots with this one. We've got 6 shots with the Callaway. I'm just going to hit the last 2 with this anyway because I can see how far they're going on the green and I can kind of see the spin from how they're reacting. This is definitely going a lot higher, minus my first one. All the rest have been really consistently back up in like the 80s, which I think is really good for this kind of club, given it's got 13.5 degrees of loft. Like anything you're getting up anywhere near like driver high with that is pretty good. All 3 of them are literally in like a 10-foot circle on the green. It's flown just shorter than the last one, so it must be like 204? Pretty good for accuracy. I have to walk down and like film the green now to show you the dispersion rather than showing my little TrackMan map. Technology, eh? It's quite nice this because if you want to hit it shorter, you can like kind of hit that power fade and take like 10 yards off it and have it be more versatile, which is definitely interesting. I didn't really feel like I could do that as much with the Callaway. So again, it goes back to that what are you going to use it for? What do you want to do? Are you creative? Do you like to do different things? Or do you just really want a club that's going to help you out in terms of like pure tech and that bigger size? What's definitely been highlighted here is with both of these clubs, I've hit way more of the green than I think I ever would with a 3-wood, which shows you're really getting a lot more forgiveness out of the bigger size of the head. I've just hit 12 balls at this green and only 3 have gone off it. I missed 1 right with the Callaway and 1 long and 1 right with the TaylorMade. I mean, there's just no way if I came here with 3-wood and hit 12 balls in a row that I would hit 9 on the green. I just know I'm not that consistent with it. This feels way more forgiving to me, and that's definitely not what I would have initially thought, given like the bigger size, the bigger profile, the bigger depth. Didn't feel that confidence inspiring, but actually says you should try stuff out because it's performed way better, and that's real food for thought. Now, if we look at the averages here, they're almost identical, to be honest, which is pretty interesting. Interesting not hitting us down as much as I thought I would, only like a degree to a degree and a half. It's a shame we don't have all the TaylorMade data because I think this would tweak this. They're basically almost identical. It's saying Callaway flew at 74 feet, TaylorMade 74.4, but that does include 1 that went very low. The last 2 I hit all were like much more consistently higher. I think what might actually be best to do is just kind of turn that first shot off to give a little bit more accuracy to what the rest of the shots were like. Yeah, so if I turn that initial one off, which I definitely hit low on the first, didn't strike very good, the TaylorMade average has gone up to 87 feet in terms of height, and that's definitely more accurate from what I saw. So that was about 10 feet higher than the Callaway, so definitely interesting. You could clearly see that was giving you more stopping power on the green because the TaylorMade balls were stopping a lot quicker. So if this is a club you feel like you're going to use into the green and you want to fly there and stop it, the burner does seem to give you a little bit more control. In terms of carry, again, the TaylorMade was slightly longer, 202 on average versus 196 with the Callaway. But I mean, that is margins, 6 yards. I do think in terms of gapping, you do need to look at how far this goes off the deck, how far this goes off the tee, what other clubs you've got in your bag and how you can make that work. I do think I would probably have to like loft off my hybrid so it went a little shorter. Or maybe what I might even do is like take out my 4-iron and my hybrid and put like a 4 hybrid in. That will probably go slightly further than the 4-iron, but near to that 3 hybrid mark, which would then leave a gap for this to go a little bit further and might even leave me room to keep my 3-wood in. So if I did actually need something that was a little hotter off the deck, I could have that option, which is pretty weird saying my 3-wood would go further than a driver, but that is just the reality of the numbers that are coming out here. Here's my little dispersion. 2 Callaways clinging on the right there. 2 TaylorMades went in nearest the pin here. These are the 3 TaylorMades I was telling you about. They're literally all on top of each other. Then a few more Callaways up here. So that testing was definitely super interesting, and we have 2 really great models here, but I think it also showed you kind of have to know what you want from a club, because they both kind of did different things in different areas, which makes picking a winner very difficult without knowing what specifically someone is looking for. Now, when we look through the data, I think I would say if you were purely looking for a club that's a second driver, is forgiving and will put you in play off the tee, I would pick the Callaway. I really did feel on that first hole, especially when it was tight, you kind of had to hit it quite tight up the left to the trees to stay in the fairway, that this was super consistent to keep in the fairway shot after shot, and it definitely gave me more confidence than I feel with a full length driver, which is surprising given the smaller head, but I just think the smaller length of the club suits me a little bit better. Being a bit smaller in stature, it's easier to control, and it definitely felt like I could put this in play as a second club to use purely off the tee to hit fairways more often. Now, having said that, it's quite hard to just have a second club in your bag that's purely for hitting fairways, unless you are a very long hitter and you don't kind of need all 14 clubs, because it is going to leave a gap at the top of your bag, and it definitely would for me. If I was taking my 3-wood out, for example, for this club, I wouldn't really have a second club to go into the green, because I found this went about 10 yards shorter off the deck than it did off the tee, which would basically leave me a second 3 hybrid in my bag, which isn't really ideal for kind of going into par 5s, which are the holes which I really kind of need to make my score on, which kind of begs the question again about what you need in your bag. And I definitely found that the TaylorMade was more versatile, and it was quite interesting because it did different things in different scenarios. So off the tee it was almost identical in terms of distance. It did feel more workable, like you could hit more shots high, low, left, right, right to left if you wanted to, than the Callaway. This felt more like a pure forgiveness kind of straight model, and perhaps this maybe is a tad less forgiving because of that, depending on what shot shapes you want to hit, but it does give you loads more options. It did spin a little bit less off the tee than the Callaway, but then it was really interesting when it came to hitting it off the deck, because it kept its distance that we saw off the tee. It basically carried 205 in all scenarios, which is pretty good for consistency, and also good for the fact it gives you that long kind of second club in the bag. And interesting, when you hit this off the deck, suddenly the spin jumped up more, so it actually gave you more control. So I think of the 2, they do different things. This would definitely be my choice in terms of something that gives you 2 options in the bag. I think it does that better. It performs off the tee and off the deck in a way that you could use it as kind of 2 clubs in your bag rather than purely just as a driver. Now, some people might be watching this video purely because they don't like drivers and they just want something to replace a driver that's easier to hit, that works better for someone who maybe hits down the ball a little bit more, just doesn't get on with the driver. And then again, I'd probably say the Callaway is the one for you. So as much as I'd love to say there's one that's infinitely better than the other, I'm sorry. That's just not quite the case here. I would say as an all-rounder, I would pick the TaylorMade. As a pure kind of driver, get the ball in play, I would pick the Callaway. Hopefully that helps you out. Hopefully this has been interesting. It's definitely been enlightening to me about the differences in mini drivers, the differences in what they can do, and just what different models there are out on the market at the moment. Now, obviously these are both limited edition runs. There's not mass amounts of them on the market. So if you want one, grab one while you can.